Shalom, angelics. Man, I know it's been a while, but wow. I have been trying to get this video out for about a month now. I lost my voice, and then it took a while for it to really come back. And then when it came back, I felt like something was missing. And so I just wouldn't make it. And so finally, yesterday, the light came on and it hit me what I was missing because this information is there's a lot of information, but I really didn't want to confuse you guys. I wanted to try to lay it out as best I could. And so I kept thinking, that it was so much information. It was going to be very difficult to follow, and that's not what I wanted. So I kind of took my time, and then I finally figured out what was missing. And so now I think, I'm ready. So this one is going to be about the statue in Nebuchadnezzar's dream. Okay, so I'm not going to go through everything about the dream because there's a lot of videos out there about Daniel interpreting the dream, but this is not really what it's about. It's about the statue itself and what I've learned, regarding the statue. So let's get into it. Copyright disclaimer. Under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976, fair use is invoked for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is permitted by copyright statute when and otherwise infringement may occur. Usage is for nonprofit educational purposes tips the balance in favor of fair use. So, this you guys know, I told you when I started, when I was awakened, I did not start with the Bible. I was given the Zohar, the Zorah. And so that's where I started. And now I'm really understanding. I have a lot more clarity regarding why, I wasn't given the Bible at that time. And it's because there's so much in the book, but it's on an esoteric level. A lot of the information that we need is really a mystery. It's hidden from the colonizers, the invaders. They didn't get this information because they don't carry they're not from the lands. They don't carry the energy of the Christ consciousness. And so there's no way for them to get this information. I kept telling you guys, a lot of us, really are where we should be. If you're still stuck in talking about preaching and all this kind of nonsense and in these certain books, only the ones that were given to you, then that's because that's where you're supposed to be. You really are supposed to be there, and you should feel comfortable knowing that because your consciousness, it can't rise to the level, that you need to go to the higher realms of ascension, okay? So we're going to look at the statute in Nebuchadnezzar's dream. And if you're looking at it right now, it tells you that there's a head of gold, and they say that this was the Babylonian time period. And then the chest and arms of silver, the Media Persia, the belly and thighs of bronze, Greece, the legs of iron, Rome, the feet of iron and clay, and then the stone that breaks it into pieces. Well, all of this, if our people have learned nothing at this point in time, is that everything that we've been told is a lie. They've given us everything according to their interpretations. They've changed the laws. They've changed the times. They've rewritten the Helios, the Biblios, the Book of the Sun, the so-called Bible. That thing has been rewritten and re-edited and regurgitated so many times. That most of the hidden knowledge that was in there, it's been taken out because they want you to read it the way they want you to read it. So you're never going to get it. But what they told you about this I'm going to tell you guys today to discard it because it's all a complete lie. There's no basis or no foundation to this statute and these people that they gave you as far as these eras, ages, time periods, and what was going on here. Just get rid of it because it's not what it is. So what this statute of Nebuchadnezzar's dream is, it's about the ages. It's about the ascension, the fall. It's really the fall of the Christ consciousness. This is what it's all about. And so each one of these metals, they represent what was going on as far as the consciousness, where the consciousness was at this period. Okay. So here it says the development of the Holocene era or the Holocene epoch. It says to observe a Holocene environment, simply look around. The Holocene is the name given to the last 11,700 years of the Earth's history, the time since the end of the last major glacial epoch or ice age. Since then, there have been small scale climate shifts, notably the Little Ice Age between about 1200 and 1700 AD. But in general, the Holocene has been a relatively warm period in between ice ages. This is what they say, this is what they call it, and so this is what they gave us. It says another name for the Holocene time that is sometimes used is the Anthropogene, the age of man. Now that's more like what it is. It's the age of man. Of the invaders being in the land is, I think, would probably be more accurate regarding what's going on here. So on the screen you have the golden age. The set is Satya Yuga, which is the key symbol is fire. Then you have the 5200 BC silver age, which is the seed. They call it the Dwapara Yuga. And then the bronze, which is not bronze at all, is actually copper. Okay, they changed it to throw us off, but it is the copper age. Okay, and this is the time when the sword, a part of it was the sword came in, and what had a lot to do with the decline in consciousness here. And then in 800 AD, they say it's the Kali Yuga, the machine, art as technique. And then they give these time periods, for the ages here. But we all know that these creatures have changed all the times. I still don't know what the time is, but I'm going to give you what I have. This, looking at what they have here, the Satya Yuga, undifferentiated, the silver, the copper, and the Kali Yuga, it doesn't tell you a whole lot because, but there's I'm going to give you a little bit, but there's so much more information involved with this, okay? So let's get a little bit better idea of what we're talking about when we're talking about Kali, Yuga, the Dwapara Yuga, um, the Satya Yuga, and the Treta Yuga. So let's look at some definitions. The first one we're going to look at, and this one should really key you guys in, on the Satya. On this, they call it the Sat Yuga. Satya means truth or essence. It is derived from the root sat, which connotes being, existing, or true. This root is cognate with the present active participle of the verb to be in Sanskrit, as well as with English words like is, are, and am. So the main thing that you need to know about this is that it expresses existence, reality, or truth. Okay? Treta Yuga, the etymology, it originates from Sanskrit as well, meaning a collection of three things or triad. So it's going to be like the third um, descent or ascent in the eon, in the age. Okay, so it's the third one, and then we're going to go to the Devapara, which is its mean the term composed of two words, vad, meaning two, and apara, meaning after or later. Therefore, Devapara Yuga literally translates to the age after the two or the second subsequent age. Okay, I've seen that the Treta and the Devara, they have been switched up in a couple of areas. So if this is what it means, then this is what it means. So it means two, and it's the second age. And then we have the Kali Yuga. People keep saying that we're in the Kali Yuga, we're in the Kali Yuga. The Kali meaning strife, discord, quarrel, contention, and yoga. When I and Yuga, an age of the world. When I read this one, it explained a lot to me. The reason that we've been in this cycle, this loop, is because they've been creating this strife and all of this contention, which is one reason the Bible, and it tells you in the Helios Biblios, rumors of wars, wars and rumors of wars, because this is the time cycle. This is the loop that they've created to put on this facade that these things were happening. So, which was a confusion of the timeline itself. So you never really know where you are because of all of this, because they've switched up everything in the Bible. They switched the books. They're not in the order that they should be in either, but that's a whole nother subject. But this is the reason for all the contention. This is the reason nobody ever knows what is going on, because they've created these scenarios. But our ancestors, and the divine put things in place so that we would know exactly what time it was, okay? We just didn't know. So now let's take a look at what the overall picture is regarding um, the Yuga cycle. They call it the Great Year, okay? And so you have your gold, your silver. It's not bronze, it's actually copper, and the iron. So the Great Year is supposed to be 4,800 years, 3,600 years, 2,400 years, and then 1,200 years, okay? And so your Sat Yuga, they're saying, is 4,800 years. As you go down, the years are supposed to the time frame gets smaller, okay? So 4,800 years, 3,600 years, 24 and 1,200. So you have 1,200 years descending, and then 1,200 years ascending, which comes up to 2,400 years total. But I think it's actually supposed to be 2,600. Not sure. You guys got to, do some research on your own to kind of get the numbers or what have you, because they've lied so much. You just don't know what the time frame is, but the ancestors did leave us something to help us get an idea of what was going on and what would be happening, okay? So this is how everything is broken down. So now let's look at what's actually happening when we're talking about the descending and ascending. Okay, so in the golden age, the Sat Yuga, we started descending. It was a cycle of descension, okay? And then that happened for, they say, 4,800 years, okay? Then we hit the Silver Age, a further descension cycle, okay? And then that was supposed to last 3,600 years. And then we went to the Copper Age, which is, everything on the planet melanated now, okay? So during that period, again, more dissension. Okay. So then the Iron Age, and then I'm gonna go just read a little bit about the scriptures and what they say, and then you're gonna get some understanding. Then in the Iron Age, you have the Kali Yuga. That's supposed to have been 1200 years of dissension in the Kali Yuga. Okay. So then what happens is we start an ascension cycle. Okay, because it seemed like we've been in complete dissension the whole time, but that's not true. That has been the deceptiveness, the wickedness of these invaders that they've kept in, which is the reason they've had the fear programs. They've had these programs about, the men being in control and all this stuff. All of these are programs. The church age and all this, more programs so that they could maintain control. So because we didn't know, well, let me speak for me. I've told you guys on multiple occasions I was in a coma. I didn't know anything about any of this. I didn't even know about the Jewish people. That's how out of touch I was, okay, until my awakening during 2017, okay? And so I didn't know. I came in this with no preconceived ideas, thoughts, or feelings or anything. I just know that my dissension, it was hard because learning the truth about what had happened, about in the past, that was difficult. It was very difficult. So I went through a horrible time there during my awakening. But now, to learn that everything has been set in place, and this is what these people have put in motion, all of these programs all over the planet of the plane, to keep us in this endless, deadless cycle, of dissension. This is what they've been doing. When in actuality, we've been ascending all along, but we just didn't know it. So the Iron Age has been, we've been ascending from the Kali Yuga, but they've kept this wars and rumors of wars and all this nonsense going on. So we didn't know. The Bronze Age, the Copper Age was the same. This is our people in this ascension cycle. When you go and you read the definitions, the etymology of these things, you'll get some clarity regarding what was given to us and what actually is going on. And then the Silver Age, we went back to the Silver Age. When they started talking about the age of Aquarius and all these things, see, these people, they knew that. They knew we were going to hear about the age of Aquarius. They knew we were going to hear about the sign, the 2017 sign. They knew that we were going to get all of this information. They knew that. But all of these things have been happening all along. You know, I remember a video that I saw um, about 3 or 4 years ago that Big Judah did. And Big Judah said, that during the whole time, that the Father, that the the Most High had been clearing out things for our ascension so that we could come back into our own. And this was true. This has been happening all along. We just did not realize that what was going on, that they had time in a loop so that we wouldn't awaken to the truth. But now yeah, we're in the truth. And this is why they shut down the Beloved Brothers, Big Judah's TikTok. See, he's been whipping that ass with the truth, and they continue to try to make us believe that we were in one place when we were actually ascending the whole time into a different place. Our people have to continue on with the truth. We can't allow them to, keep us in this programming loop. The truth is important. They cannot take the truth because this is where we are. All of these signs that were given to us, they have perverted them, everything. But this has been out there, and I don't know if they just didn't know it, or about the interpretation or putting it together. I don't know. But everything came in one book. Everything came together. This information was for us until these invaders, the colonizers came in and they start tearing apart everything. But we are in Satyah, we are in the age of truth, and they know it, but we didn't know it. So the truth is important, and our people have to keep pushing this truth because this is where we are. This is our age of enlightenment, truth. Okay, so I just wanted to break this down, but I'm going to give you some more information to go with it so you can get a better picture of exactly what's happening. So now we're going to cover the dream that Nebuchadnezzar had, and Daniel talking about it. Okay, I'm just going to read it. You guys want the script, you can get it yourself. Okay, so this is Daniel 2:31. Daniel 2:31. Thou, O king, sawest, and behold, a great image. This great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee, and the form thereof was terrible. The image's head was of fine gold, his breast and his arms of silver, his belly and his thighs of brass. 33. His legs of iron, his feet part of iron and part of clay. Thou sawest till that a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon his feet that were of iron and clay, and brake them to pieces. 35. Then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, and the gold broken to pieces together, and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors, and the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. This is the dream, and we will tell the interpretation thereof before the king. Okay, so now let me tell you about this interpretation. You got to remember, these are people who, one, probably don't have a soul, that changed the interpretation from what Daniel had and put their own spin on it. And you'll be able to tell it based on the way that it's written, okay? So here we go. 37. Thou king art a king of kings, for the God of heaven hath given thee a kingdom, power, and strength, and glory. And wheresoever the children of men, and these are the children of men, remember we did this distinction back in other videos about the children of men, dwell, the beast of the field and the fowls of the heaven hath he given into thine hand, and hath made thee ruler over them all. Thou art this head of gold. Okay? And after thee shall arise another kingdom inferior to thee, and another third kingdom of brass, which is copper, which shall bear rule over all the earth. And we did. The copper people, they ruled the entire earth. Okay? And the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron. And you notice that, when he got to the kingdoms, they didn't really break down anything of the kingdoms. I'm pretty sure that Daniel had a lot of stuff broken down before they went through and perverted, the sacred text. So a lot of this information was left out. The ancestors, the divine knew that they would leave it out. And so there were other ways to get the information to us, okay? 40. And the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, for as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdue all things, and as iron that breaketh all these, shall it break in pieces and bruise. And whereas thou sawest the feet and toes part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it of strength of the iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with murray clay. And as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. This is all the confusion, all of the things that have been done that they did to keep, all of this drama going on with, all of the fear programming, all of the destruction, all of the tearing down the copper people, everything that they did. This is what they're talking about, the Murray clay, the iron, and how these invaders came with the sword. Because you got to remember, in the Kali Yuga, there was a sword. And so they refused to give up the sword in order to carry out this great deception regarding the time period, which is the reason they've continued to destroy the copper people. This is the reason that they've continued, to tear them down in the streets and do all the things that they were doing, is because they wanted to keep the illusion that we were still in the Kali Yuga. And that was the only thing that they could do. It was the only way that they can show that they continued to carry the sword. This is what they did. This was well thought out, and it was thought out by all of the nations. They all went along with this, every single one of them. They refuse to change anything. This is the reason why none of them can speak up now, because they took the bag. They agreed to this. They all did blood contracts, to keep the lie going on, so that they would have us in a state and a frame of mind, of confusion that we didn't know. But that was one good thing about the beloved brother Big Levi. He kept saying, don't be confused, don't be confounded by this, because this is what they had going on. This is why they continued the change the timelines and to portray this Kali Yuga and to change and to cloud up the skies and put all this crap in the skies and to continue this loop that they had going on. This is what they were doing, and this is how they were doing it, because they knew we would know the scripts. They knew that. They knew that there were going to be signs. They knew that because they had the signs when, that we had our ship to shore moment here. They had signs over there. They knew this. So they continued this great deception. 44, and in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. And they knew this, and this is what they were trying to prevent. For as much as thou sawest that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it break in pieces of iron, the brass, the clay, the silver, and the gold, the great God hath made known to the king what should come to pass hereafter. And the dream is certain, and the interpretation thereof sure. And they knew that. That was Daniel 45. Okay, so I read all the way down to 45. So they knew these things were going to happen. And as a result, Nebuchadnezzar went out and started destroying the copper people to prevent these things from unfolding, because they knew that they had to keep the lie going on to prevent the kingdom that was going to come and stand forever. And this is what they've been doing. So let's look at what they've written about this. So they've said the sacred texts of ancient India tell us that we are living in the Kali Yuga, the time when our consciousness touches rock bottom. We've been there. The coppers were already there. Most ancient cultures believe that human civilization moves in grand cycles, slowly declining from golden ages of illumination and harmony to dark ages of ignorance and strife. In India, this cycle was called the Yuga. This cycle was called the Yuga cycle, and this is what has been going on. These are the ages. That statue of Daniel spoke about the ages of the earth, what was happening in the cycles, the changes in the earth. So when it got to the iron and the clay, this meant that it was going to be at the lowest level of ignorance, that the people would have absolutely no clue what was going on. See, in the golden age, you had the sun, okay? That was the sun cycle there. That's the gold. Then when you hit the silver, that's the moon. This is when the veil has started to cover the earth. This is the moon, the veil. And then when you hit the coppers, that's when we were ruling. And at that time, there was further decline because of wickedness. We had started leaving the path. The knowledge wasn't there. We didn't really have the knowledge that we needed in order to connect and go further, to head back to the ascension cycle, because everything was in a constant descent because of the lack of knowledge. I mean, we all know the script, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. And this is true. It was an ignorance, because after the golden age, there was a steady decline in ignorance. And then when we hit the Iron Age, and the people started following after the invaders and going along with their, what they did, how they perverted everything that we had already in place. And now I'm wondering if this goes all the way back to 1776, if not further, when they started changing. They came over here in 1492 and they started changing everything. And then, they took their constitution and put it in place. This was all a part of the dissension. These people have been ignorant always. They've never had any type of damn knowledge. They've never had any knowledge. Never, ever. They were not in any of they weren't in the cycle of the silver cycle, the moon. That wasn't them. That was the time of the Atlanteans, when they were transitioning from the golden age to the silver. Because in the golden age, that was the Lumerians. That was all parthenogenesis. This is when the Atlanteans are actually the descendants of the Lemurians. This is when man actually came on the earth, because before it was women. And then as that continued and the Atlanteans were warring amongst themselves for technology and control and all these things, this is when, everything fell. And then when Atlantis sank, all was left was the copper people. And then the copper people didn't have the knowledge, because that went down with the Atlanteans. Okay. And then when the invaders came and they took all the knowledge, all they did was pervert it and make it something else. And so they've never really had any knowledge. They've been ignorant from the get-go. And our people were following them because we didn't know. We came along in the cycle when the dissension was so bad, we didn't know. And then as the cycle started ascending and we left the Kali Yuga, we didn't know. I mean, I didn't know. I had absolutely zero knowledge of any of this. I didn't know what was going on, because going, trying to learn and get education, and survive in this system that they had created. The only thing we could focus on was our families and trying to survive. But at the time, the epochs were ascending. Our people were ascending. There was knowledge that was coming on board that our people had, but they couldn't go further. It wasn't, until, I realized, that when the Big Judah stepped out and he broke away from everything That brother had to break away from everything, and he probably didn't even know why he was doing it other than it was in his spirit. And then, you know, things were trying to take him out. These energies were here to try to take him out, to prevent him from going in a direction that he was going. But he had to. He didn't have a choice because the power and the energy that was on him, he couldn't shake that. He may have even tried to shake it and he couldn't. But we have been in ascension all along, and some of us have just had to break from the norm in order to make this happen. And this is why things are happening so quickly now, is because some of us have broken away from what was in place. And because the ascension cycle was going to happen with or without us, because it was written to happen. This is what that statute was about. It was going to happen. It was just that those of us who, you know, were awakened, we had decisions to make, and we were going to either go with the flow or we were going to move past it. And, you know, in our spirits, that's all we could do was move past what was happening. You know, I left the church a long, 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 long time ago, and I knew I was never going back. There was nothing there for me. There was nothing there for me. Nothing. There was nothing. And so this is what we've had to do. And so those of us who have moved forward knew that we didn't have a choice but to move forward. So the sacred texts of ancient India tell us that are living in the Kali Yuga, but we're not. The times have been changed. Okay. We were in the dark ages of ignorance. You know, that was where the iron, you know, and all the fighting and all of that came along because they didn't know anything that came from those caves and all they knew how to do was fight. We're way past that. Over several years, I have scoured the ancient texts, the traditions of many cultures, Hindu, Buddhist, Greek, Persian, the Hopi, Aztec, etc., and tried to delineate the common threads that run through them in order to figure out what the original Yuga cycle might have looked like. I also kept a close watch on the latest scientific findings, but we all know that they're changing their science. Their science is garbage. Since any Yuga cycle framework needs to be backed up by as much scientific data as possible, and that's what they've been going on, their science, but they've always been in the age of the dark ages, the age of ignorance. They've always been in the age of ignorance. They've tried to do the machines, but the only thing that they've done is they've regurgitated old Atlantean technology stuff that they found, you know, that was lost here when Atlantis went down. That's all they've done. They've not created anything, nothing. So when you hear them talk about all of these new things that they're coming out, they know that they don't have that. They've always been in ignorance. Always. They have always been in ignorance. Always. They've never known anything. I know why people want to believe that, you know, they know something, but they don't. They've never known anything. They've always been in darkness. I also kept a close watch scientific findings since Yuga cycle framework needs to be backed up with scientific data as possible. In this book, I have presented what I believe is the original Yuga cycle timeline, and it indicates that the Kali Yuga ends in 2025. No, the Kali Yuga has been over. It's been over. We are well headed or into the Sat Yuga cycle. We we're done with Kali Yuga. A lot of people are still stuck in the Kali Yuga cycle because they have grounded themselves in their root chakra and stayed in the earth. So they are still in that Kali Yuga cycle because this is the programming that's in the earth for them to be. Because for some reason they thought if we stayed in the root chakra, these things weren't going to happen. Or they thought that if we stayed there, that the earth would be destroyed. But the powers that be already had something in place. So that was not going to happen. There's compelling evidence from multiple sources that by the year 2040, the Kali Yuga structure and ideologies may be entirely obliterated by a combination of wars, natural disasters, natural catastrophes, and common impacts. A few survivors, their minds made pure and luminous by the energies of this period, will inherit a renewed earth and become the seeds of a new humanity, which will chart its course to the next golden age or Satya Yuga. And this is where we are. He was right about this. He knows what's supposed to come, but they didn't know the timeline where we were. And this is because so much had been destroyed to hide the cycle of what was going on. The Yuga cycle doctrine posits that every Yuga is followed by a period of cataclysmic events when all traces of the previous civilizations are destroyed. And that's what's going on now. So let's see what else the author has to say. He says Golden Age kingdoms like Atlantis existed in every part of the world where the gods founded kingdoms, got temples and places built, instituted religious rituals and the rules of monarchy, and had children with mortal women who took over the duties of the king. This gave rise to the widespread concept of divine kingship, where the king was regarded as a son of God on the earth. He had the divine mandate to rule and function as an intermediary between the people and the gods. And this is what they call gods. These were the Atlanteans. They had knowledge, they ruled the world at the time. They were the descendants of the Lemurians, and so they were all over the earth. So all of this nonsense, people debating about who came first, the chicken or the egg, or the Indian or the Native American, all this buffoonery is crazy because the Atlanteans were here first. The offspring of the Lemurians. See, everybody here is an Atlantean. Every melanated person is an Atlantean. Okay? We know that there are other people here, other beings here, other entities here, but every melanated person here, a copper person here in America is not an Atlantean. It's not. The Lemurians were here. They have offspring that are here. So if Lemurian offspring are here, what does that mean? That you got to have Lemurians here too. So every melanated person here cannot be, every copper person here cannot be, every so-called African American cannot be an Atlantean. That's not how it works. So people need to stay in their own lane, figure out who they are, let everybody else figure out who they are or what they are. Just stay in your lane. The patron god of Atlantis was Poseidon, the god of the sea. He had married a mortal woman called Cleito and divided up his kingdom between his children. Okay, so the woman could not have been mortal because the only people here at the time were the Lemurians and the Atlanteans. Okay, so this is what these people think, but they don't really know anything about what happened before. They don't. They just know that, or they have these hand-me-down stories that people have written about or told them about, but the truth has been hidden for so long that what they were digging up was a pass on from one generation to another generation based on what was written. But the Lemurians were here first, okay? Or their consciousness were here, and then the Atlanteans. And I'm going to show you that in a few minutes. So the descendants of Poseidon adhered to virtue and ruled wisely, but towards the end of the days of the empire, they fell under the sway of greed and unrighteous power. See, this was all about power. So, thus, the decline in consciousness of the Atlantean kings had started towards the end of the Golden Age itself. Okay? So, the Atlanteans actually brought in the Silver Age. They were still around during the Golden Age. It was the Lemurians, the Atlanteans, because the Lemurians were the ones who could have children, and they didn't need to have a mate. They didn't need a consort. They didn't need anyone there because the women could do what was called the Immaculate Concept or the Immaculate Conception. They didn't need it. It really existed. It's just not the way that it was put out in the Bible because there was so much information that was left out of the Bible. So they had to put it in there somewhere way in order to cause some type of confusion. But that came a lot later. The whole thing about what's in the Bible, that Bible, it came later. In fact, it came during the time of the Iron Age. See, the coppers already had their information down. They had kept the artifacts, um, hieroglyphics, the petroglyphics, all this stuff was already documented. They had this when this is what they did when the fallen consciousness started. There had to be some way to document this. And so there wasn't a masculine and a feminine energy. That came, with much later on, and all of this stuff about the Egyptians, that all that came it was way later, way later. But this is why it's called the man tricks. Man tricks. Okay? Matrix is man tricks. Is because everything got interwoven until what the matrix. It's all tricks, trickery. That's all it is. It's a lot of trickery about what they did. But that dream of Nebuchadnezzar, that statue, it lays out everything right there to tell you exactly what was going on. So these things came a lot later. So, thus, the decline in consciousness of the Atlantean kings had started towards the end of the Golden Age itself, a process that had begun as per Plato due to mortal admixture. So, this started happening not at that time because there wasn't a mortal admixture at that time. Okay? Because you had the Lemurians and the Atlanteans. The Atlanteans were the Atlanteans. They were all Atlanteans. And then when Thoth, the Atlantean, came about and he came into the story, so they say he was one of the children of men. So it tells me that he had to have come later. All of these things came later. The ancient Egyptians, the Egyptians came during the Copper Ages. There was conflict in Atlantis with the Atlanteans. A lot of confusion, conflict, and they broke off, and some of them started doing their own thing. This is how there was chaos amongst the Atlanteans. There was conflict, okay? And so the problem started, and then they broke off into their own little groups. A lot of this isn't said, but this is exactly what happened. This is where you started with the copper people. They lost their colors. They were gold. You had the green ones, you had the blue ones. All of these colors, and they became the colored people. They weren't the copper people. They were called the colored people, but this is who they were, the copper people. All of this had to do with the dissension. They descended from the knowledge. They fell into ignorance. So then they say the ancient Egyptians spoke of a distant period called Zep Tepi, or first time, which was a golden age when the gods Ra, Shu, Geb, Osiris, Horus, and others ruled on the earth. Well, according to Egyptologist R.T. Rundle Clark, the first time was a golden age of absolute perfection, before rage or clamor or strife or uproar had come about. These were the Lemurians. They didn't have all this chaos and conflict. It wasn't until the one decided to go off and have this son, because I watched this movie called Dune. And in the movie, this is what it was. They were telling this story. So if you haven't seen it, go see it. But I think it's on either Hulu or Netflix or one of those. But anyway, everything was run by women. And then the one woman decided to have a son when they were told no male offspring. But then the male offspring came about, and what happened was he took his all of his mother's power. Sound familiar for those who are listening who've read anything in the Nag Hammadi? Sophia and Yaldabal. Okay, so that whole story, that's what it reminded me of. So if you haven't read that and you're not familiar with the Nag Hammadi, you got to do some deep diving into that. But that's what it reminded me of. There was no death, disease, or disaster occurred in this blissful epoch known variously as the time of Ra, the time of Osiris, or the time of Horus, and it was not known for any of those times. That's not what it was. Okay, this is what their spin is. I don't this ancient Egyptians, no, that wasn't the case. They didn't come along until later on, and this was when all the coppers were on the land, and there was a breakout of the people, and there was conflict. This is when the chaos started. There was no chaos in the beginning. The chaos didn't start until the conflict with the Atlanteans, because of the technology and what some wanted to do and what others didn't want to do, and how it fell into descent. This is why what caused the descent and the sinking of Atlantis. Okay, so then you have the coppers, not the bronze. If you look at it, you have the sun, um, which is golden, which is gold. You have the silver, which is the moon. Then you have the coppers, and then you have the iron. All of these elements, you know, concern planetary identities. Okay, and I'm not going to go into that. You guys can look up which planet applies and all this, because all of that's involved too. So here is another look at the Yuga cycle timeline. I'm not going to really go into it. I just want you guys to see how the author actually broke this down, but others have broken it down too. So you may find, if you're doing the research on it, you may find several um, looks on it as far as what the cycles were supposed to be. But that's only because the information, the knowledge about it was hidden. They put it away, they tore the books apart so that we could not figure out what exactly was going on and when it was going on, because they changed the timelines. They put the all of the stars, whatever was going up there with the Revelation 12 sign and all these type of things. They've screwed and warped around with the timeline, messed it up so that you really would never know where you were and what was going on. So I just want to give you guys that, but I'm going to look at just close with information about the cataclysms to kind of explain a little bit about what's going on right now, okay? See, these people knew that things happened in cycles. And I kept trying to figure out, well, how did they know about all these cycles? I knew they had our records and everything, but I heard the one guy talking about another ice age. Yeah, well, I got that one. And so I was trying to figure out, well, what is it? What how do they know what's going to happen when it's going to happen? And they keep saying, well, it's not going to be that bad because these things happen in cycle and blah, blah, blah. And they never tell the people. Nobody ever knows. But this is how they know because they have our books, they have the information. But the thing is that information cut off and they said 2012. And I don't know if it was 2012 or not because of the fact that they changed all the timelines. Everything has been changed so that we would be confused and wouldn't know when anything was happening or supposed to happen. But this kind of, helped me know exactly what was going on regarding this new this freeze that's coming and everything that's supposed to be happening, all of these things with the cataclysms and things, all of that, all of this goes hand in hand. This information, about this, about the shifting of the poles, how what's happening there in another video. If you didn't watch it, you can kind of tie into what's happening with these cataclysms into you know, that video. So either way. So let's look at the Yuga ending cataclysms. A prelay resets civilization. And everything that I've read, a prelay was supposed to be like a resting period. But here, that's not the case. Here it means destruction. But in another book that I read, it meant rest. So here the prelay means destruction. Okay. So destruction resets civilization so that the new yuga can begin on a fresh note in an environment that has been cleansed of impurities and evil. In the Mahabharata, and I have the Mahabharata, I've read some of it, but right now, Lex Will, if you haven't read it, don't know what it is, don't know anything about Lex Will is kind of breaking down that right now. So if you want to listen to his videos, go listen to him, Lex and Will, Will. Listen to his videos about the Mahabharata. Okay. Lord Vishnu tells the sage Markandeya, and when the end of the yuga cometh, assuming the fierce form of death, alone I destroy all the three worlds with their mobile and immobile existences. The concept of a yuga ending prelay destruction was deeply ingrained in the psyche of the Vedic people and woven into the fabric of the ancient legends. So common was this knowledge that there is hardly any official documentation of the sequence of events that unfold during a prelay. It's all described in the form of metaphors. The primary agents of destruction has been identified as fire, comets, water, and a effulgent second sun that arises at the end of a yuga. Okay, so now I was with this second sun that arises at the end of the yuga, that tells me that we are at the end of the what is the Trita Yuga, because although most of you don't know that we do have a second sun. We actually have a second sun that came about, I think it was in 2012. Okay. So I'm thinking that that was the end of that Treta Yuga, which was the fifth sun, and ushered in the sixth sun for us to be now in the golden age. Okay, so if anybody is interested, you guys can take a look at that, and do a little research on that one. But I don't know. I'm thinking that with that rising of that second sun, it ended. It ended Bharat Yuga, the ended the Treta Yuga, and since it's at the end of that yuga, every yuga another sun arises, and we do know that the sun that's there now, that the one that we are seeing now, is different from the one that we saw before. And people, okay, so this is what's going on with this second sun. The first sun is still there, but it's in a different rotation cycle as a second sun, which is the reason that some people see two suns, are able to photograph two suns during the daytime. Some people see the second sun, that the first sun, they see it at night, and they're saying, why is the moon looking like that? That can't be the moon, blah, blah, blah. And there's all this confusion. It's because that really is the first sun. The second sun is the one that we see during the daytime now, most of the times. But because they overlay each other, they pass each other sometimes, it could be different. And I go out now and I'm like, is that the first sun or the second sun? And another thing that we have to realize about the time of this, and why, I know that we're in this Satya Yuga, is because of the knowledge increasing. And the scripture says that knowledge would increase. So these are the kind of the signs that we need to know what's actually going on. I may do a video about the second son. I don't know. I don't want to cause any confusion or anything like that. um, I'm going to end this one because it's kind of longer than what I had anticipated. What I knew with all the information, it would be kind of long, but it's just maybe a little bit longer than I want it to be. So if you guys have any questions or anything, or you're interested in seeing something else, because this information about the yuga there's a lot of information out there, because they've been trying to time it all along, and it's been virtually impossible to time. But I believe that right now we're in the beginning of um, the Satya Yuga, the Golden Yuga. Okay, so much love to the Most High, to the divine wisdom, to the fam. You guys just stay strong, hang in there, and stay at peace, because we are in a time of peace. All the programming that they have out there is to continue our people in fear, and all of this about Jacob's trouble. Um, the beloved brother Big Levi has said, be at peace, that there will be no more Jacob's trouble, and he is absolutely correct. We are in the golden age. This whole thing about Aquarius age and all this, they moved everything and screwed up the timeline so that we wouldn't know what was actually going on. But if the esoteric knowledge is, it is what it is, and you either can get it or you can't. Okay, so if you guys have any questions, just hit me up. All right, much love. Be at peace, guys. Shalom, 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 shalom. Be at peace. Be at peace. Be at peace.